Hello again, everybody. We're here in Richmond now, and it's again January 2nd, 2016. We're in what we call the West Cambie area. It's basically in the northeast corner of Alderbridge and Garden City. Now, this is one of the original areas in Richmond. I think this was people were living here back in the early 1900s. Basically, it was sort of boggy soil. Wasn't really good much for farming. People would have would probably have acre lots. One interesting thing I want to sort of start the discussion with is the history of this area as far as development. This was one of the big sort of semi-developed, like as far as acres, half acres lots, which were common in Richmond at the time, that was left as sort of an undecided issue. Actually, it's funny thing is my grandparents used to live on Garden City Road there years ago. They built a house in the 60s. That was about the time that the new YVR was built, new runways in the whole facility, and unfortunately their house is literally under the flight path. So they were in the house no longer than 2 years. They were in no longer more than 2 years, and they just couldn't stand the noise. So they basically got out of here. Now, approximately 20 years ago, this area was looked at very seriously by the city for development. But because of the flight noise, as we're hearing now behind us, we're probably going to hear a lot more planes. A new runway was built in the mid-90s, and it redirected more air traffic over to these areas. So various lawsuits were occurring because of people feeling they're losing property value because people wouldn't want to buy with increased air traffic. So the whole area became a bit of a lull for a while. Then they removed any planning for this area whatsoever. It just became a dead zone. Everything just died. Okay. Then over there, where the crane is, that will be a Walmart facility. Now, this has always piqued my interest in that the Walmart was about 2004. They wanted to take about 30 acres in that corner area over there where you see all that commercial development and put in a Walmart thing. Well, I've always found there was something more behind the story, which I'm sure the truth will come out eventually. But what had happened was everything started to stay on hold, and then all of a sudden the city decided to relook at this area. So from 1996, again, just to go back on the timeline, the project died. That 30 acres you see developed now was stopped. Okay, let's do the math again. So about 8 years after this, the rezoning was pulled. That showed up. Then the city decided, well, let's just do the whole area instead of this would be 160 acres, half mile by half mile area. So rather than doing the Walmart, let's look at this whole area again. So they came up with what they call the West Cambie plan about 2 or 3 years after the Walmart application. Now, as we can see by looking around, you can see there's a fair bit of high density construction here. So what's changed? I mean, you still have the airplanes, and there's probably more of them. So what's happened? Well, my suspicion is that the Walmart is sort of like a Trojan horse to get the issue restarted, which gave the city an excuse to say, well, okay, let's look at this area again. So within 10 years after it was turned down, this whole thing has started up again. So you have to read between the lines about what is going on. Okay, what's different since 1996? Well, I think what happened was with this ghost city phenomenon we're having here, there's more and more pressure for the developers to get into the land here and get their hooks in it. Another pattern I've noticed in my many years in Richmond is that the big time developers, such as this one on the sign here, and many of the other big ones, they're the tail that wags the dog. They're the tail and they wag the city, okay? Mm-hmm. And what they'll often do is establish stakes in an area, buying land, and either then applying for rezoning or working in cahoots with the city to get the zoning going. So what often happens is these guys often want to get in there early, get their hooks into the cheap land, and they're willing to sit for 5-10 years and let the market rise, and eventually they get what they want, which is what we see here, which is what they turned down. Now this is 20 years after this development was first turned, after any sort of look at this area was turned down. Now they're getting what they want. All right. And funny, the Walmart is one of the last things that are going to happen here. And it's just getting built while this area is getting built up. Another thing, a little tricky thing in this Ghost City phenomenon is that my understanding is people that buy here have to sign waiver forms on their purchase contracts because of the airplane noise. Okay. In other words, they acknowledge that they're under a flight path, and they have lost their. That's my understanding, but that's what I've been told. See, there's another plane going. You hear the noise? So this will happen about every 2 or 3 minutes. You know, the takeoff. There's also a landing facet, but that's a takeoff, as we can see. So this is probably my suspicion is what happened. Back to rewind a little bit, is that they realized that they had a foreign market to cater to. The city was strong-armed into making this development, and in the Ghost City, you don't really give a shit about, pardon my French, about planes, because you're not going to hear them. You live several thousand miles away. But what word to the wise and the more apparent or awake is that if you do buy it here, you should look at your contract, because it'll probably say you have no right to sue the airport. In other words, you've waived any right. So if they increase air traffic or build another runway and the noise gets even worse, you're basically screwed. But what I'm trying to show is one facet of the power of developers and the city. And probably I would submit that Walmart development was nothing but a Trojan horse to kickstart this thing. They wanted in there, and I have further suspicions that the Lansdowne Mall, which is kitty corner to that, will basically die off, because this Walmart tends to suck a lot of the retail business away. This is kitty corner from another mall, and my suspicions are that mall will probably die, and it'll be turned into probably high-density residential, more Ghost City inventory, because this will be the final stake in the heart for much of the retail sector in Richmond once this mall is built. Now we're going to go across the street here. So we're looking now south, and we're going to proceed up the street here. And I want to show you another interesting thing in the change in the development, the strength of the developers. And that being that in the community plan, this corner here, this would be the east or the southeast corner of the West Cambie area. This area here was originally, where you see the construction over here, this area here, kind of where this new development was, that was actually tentatively planned to be a park area, because the city, has to incorporate parks and developments with, especially high density. But what had happened was the developers, for whatever reason or whatever ability they had sort of either strong-armed or convinced the city to no, we don't need park here. Let's just rezone the land and just instead of a nice park here as the original plan, we're going to put in more of the same. So the point here being, again, just to review, is that how much power these people have. Go in here and basically twist the city's arms and involve here. The other thing too is the city is often very behind the not behind the 8 ball. They're very slow in the draw for many reasons. They would have to pay market price for building the park. So as the property prices increase, the city, if it had wanted to put in, say, a 10-acre park in here, would have to pay the price of, say, rezoned condos. That's consistent with the areas, is like the density here. So in other words, they'd have to pay market price as if it was a condo going on there. I think what happened here is the city realized they were going to be paying like several $1 million that they didn't want to spend, and said, okay, the hell with it, wave the white flag, whether they got strong-armed or they just said, no, we can't afford it, one or the other. The thing is, the original plan has, again, been amended to facilitate what we're seeing here, which again is just, you know, the vicious circle. Is just more ghost city inventory and probably the least desirable part of Richmond to live with the airport. So again, this is a nice little niche thing about the power of the almighty dollar, and they would build this on a radioactive site if they could get away with it. So I mean, that's how sarcastic one has to get after a while here. So I guess we'll cut this one off, and this is more for people to digest on how things happen in the real world. Okay, folks, we'll be in touch.